Okay, so today have David Burke of Sleep Science Academy, and he's an international speaker, TEDx presenter. He's a best-selling author of The Sleep Advantage. He's a renowned sleep coach. He's a health and performance expert. And so is there anything you can't do, David? Devin, sorry, Devin.
Yeah.
Great to have you. I'm dyslexic. I've written Devin, and I'm reading saying David. Yeah, Devin. Great
Well,
to meet you,
I'm
Devin.
great to be here, Pete, and I'm dyslexic too, so don't worry.
Oh, well, I'm
We're
not really. I was just making a bad
well,
joke.
I am actually.
Wow.
So,
Okay. I've really made a bad joke of it then. Yeah. So
yeah,
great to
no,
have you.
great to be here. I appreciate you having me on the show. I'm excited to
Yeah. Oh, all the
talk
way
sleep
from
with you.
Florida.
That's right.
Yeah. So where do you want to start? Do you want to tell us about, the highlights of the career, the highlights of your Sleep Science Academy, or do you want to start with why do we need better sleep?
I'm gonna since it's your show, I'm gonna let you drive the ship. So wherever you want to start, I'm happy to share.
Well, let's start with why poor sleep or lack of sleep is a problem.
Yeah, I mean it's a massive problem. And like most people don't realize how big of a problem it is until they're not getting great sleep. And so like for me, before I got into sleep science and before I started helping people, all over the world really get and stay asleep, I used to take it for granted myself. Like I didn't realize how much actually happens during the night, and I studied a lot of different things from nutrition to exercise physiology and psychology and all these different things over like a decade, but I never really studied sleep. I never understood why sleep was important. I kind of thought it was a waste of time. I never actually had a problem sleeping. And it actually wasn't until a client reached out to me I was working with. He said, "Hey, I'm having real massive sleep issues and it's really messing up my rhythm and it's like kind of ruining my life. Like, can you help me?" And it wasn't until he reached out for help. I started looking into, well, sleep, like, okay. So I started to look into the science around it. And then my eyes were open to how important it is, how it's literally the foundation that extraordinary health is built on, that if we're not sleeping, our bodies aren't repairing, our minds aren't repairing. And, really getting into the science of what happens when we sleep, when we don't get sleep, literally our body starts to fall apart. It literally starts to fall apart. Um, and there's certain stages of sleep where our brains are actually more active during the night than they are during the day. It's when we burn the most fat. It's when our brains clean out the toxins that build up that cause Alzheimer's and dementia. It's essential for our immune system. If you're not sleeping, you're more susceptible to getting the flu, viruses. It's really like, and it's emotional first aid for just being able to be a stable human being in this crazy chaotic world that we live in. It's like a reprieve. It's like,
Yeah.
so I mean, we can go deep on the science and nerd out on the science if you want, but
Yeah, there's so many aspects to the benefit. That one thing that I thought of then is the it was on Twitter the other week. There was someone who asked one of the a quiz, and they were trying to ask. It was a yes or no answer, and their question was: is stress just a reaction to everything that disrupts our homeostasis? And my response was no, because we build up stress from just day-to-day living. It's not, you don't have to have an input of a, a stressful event to develop stress within our cells. That I said that is why we need sleep. I mean, even a Buddhist monk needs to sleep, even if they are meditating 24/7. So what's your thoughts on that?
yeah, 100%. I'm total alignment with what you just said. I mean, well, the thing about sleep and stress, they're bidirectionally linked. So meaning the worse you sleep, the more stress your body experiences. The more stress your body experiences, the worse you sleep. So it's, so one affects the other. And really this is where people get stuck, is when they're not prioritizing protecting sleep, or they don't know how to really understand how to get out of this paradox that people find themselves in, where they're trying to force and control sleep and it stresses them out more. It's then they're not sleeping, so their bodies are more stressed. And then, like I said, it's like the stress body it's hyper aroused. It's your body thinks that it's getting chased by a tiger when it's about, you're laying in bed and your mind's racing, thinking about all the things you need to do, should have done, could have done, it's a real vicious cycle that a lot of people are finding themselves in now, with the increase on top of our normal homeostatic stress levels, just with families and work and everything else. Now we have this whole thing called COVID, right?
Mm.
And so, yeah, more people, we're supporting more people now than ever as a result of just an increase of stress, which then directly relates to people not being able to sleep.
Yeah, and all the different types of stress, if you can touch on those a little bit, because obviously, let's say you exercise hard, it's oxidative stress. You eat bad food, it's insulin resistance, it's lower levels of oxygen. Emotional stress is higher adrenaline and cortisol, higher anxiety levels, or poor food, and deficiencies would be adrenal stress or thyroid issues. And touch on, is it sleep's getting rid of all of these things, and improving the body in every way? Is that right?
That's 100% right. And yeah, you absolutely nailed it with all those sort of subcategories of stress. But really, you can think of sleep as the salve that kind of soothes all of those stress responses. I mean, that's in delta deep sleep. That's when, our physical body repairs. That's when, testosterone, growth hormone, that's when all those important hormones. I kind of like I tell people it's kind of like the garbage men come out and start to just clean up all the trash, the oxidative stress, the free radicals, the things. Even if you're living a healthy lifestyle, you're eating organic, you're training your body, we constantly have free radicals from the air we breathe, the water we drink, um, you know, emotional stress, fear, that creates trauma in the body. But during the night, all of that gets restored, refreshed. It's kind of like hitting a reset. That's why, I mean, that's one of the main reasons why we sleep. I mean, it's physiological to clear out the waste, right? And it's psychological as well to kind of help find our balance. That's, one of the theories on dreaming is to work and process the emotional traumas that were, kind of pushed to the side throughout the day. So
Earlier on, yeah, you
yeah.
mentioned earlier on that our brain's doing a lot of work at night. So are dreams a way for our body to open up different neural connections, in terms of, if we're in a state of fight or flight all the time and we're experiencing anxiety, for example, all the time, those pathways become the default pathways. Is therefore dreaming in a way trying to open up some different pathways?
That's a great question. Honestly, I don't know.
Yeah,
And
dreaming, I guess, is one of those things we don't.
yeah,
It's
well,
hard to test.
it is. And there are some really interesting new research and studies that are coming out about dreams. I mean, really, like, the science around sleep is a fairly new field, and they're discovering new things every, every year, every month. And so, but dreams specifically, that's something that I think we're just getting to the prep, getting into. How do you understand dreams? How do you, really understand what's going on in the brain when you're dreaming, and how you can sort of tap into that for performance or for healing? But there are some interesting things, research going on, I think, right now, to sort of understand that at a deeper level, which is exciting.
Yeah. And so previously, what you're talking about, sleep's super important, hormones, things come in and clear out all the trash. Is circadian rhythm the underlying factor that we need to focus on, or not?
Well, there's two systems in the body that control sleep. Circadian rhythm is one, and the other is called sleep pressure. So the buildup of adenosine. And adenosine is, builds up in our mind body systems, and then every night it gets essentially cleared out. And so what controls circadian rhythm is really light, temperature, and food. So, both of those systems, the body loves rhythm, the body loves routine. And unfortunately, because of the modern lifestyle that we live in, we disrupt both of those systems. We drink caffeine, which essentially blocks adenosine buildup in our body, right? And then we got screens into the wee hours of the night, which, doesn't allow the melatonin faucet to turn on to tell us it's time to, start to get sleepy and go to bed. Most of us are just eating the wrong foods at the wrong times, like eating too close to bedtime, sugar and, all the sweets. So it really, our entire sleep system needs to be reset as a culture. So it's a big problem.
Yeah. So what do you tackle first, say, or is it if someone walks in, it's really just a simple questionnaire and you can say, oh, well, they're up late watching TV till 11 o'clock every night. That would be the first thing you tackle, or do you have a set way that you would tackle everyone?
Yeah, so we actually, so we have a holistic approach based in science that's pretty unique. Um, Most people were like their last resort after they tried all the sleep hygiene, after they're taking all the sleep supplements, maybe they're taking, even prescription medication, and they're still not sleeping. Usually that's when they are
Yeah.
still looking, and
They've spent
hopefully,
maybe thousands of dollars on biohacking
oh
gadgets.
yeah, new beds, they got the chili pad, they got like the blackout shades, they're doing everything and they're still not able to sleep. Usually those are the people that we work with, because of the unique framework that we have. And we always start with the mind. Then we go to the body, and then we go to the environment. And the mistake most people make is they start with their environment. So they try to do all the sleep hygiene stuff, and maybe they're taking sleep supplements. And if they're still having issues getting or staying asleep, then they start to get worried. Hey, I'm doing all the right things, but I can't sleep. And they get stuck in this paradox of trying to force and control sleep, which creates more pressure, more hyperarousal in the body, which keeps them in a stress state, essentially, which doesn't allow their body to do what it's designed to do, which is sleep. Just like our heart beats, our lungs breathe, we don't need to think about it. Sleep's not really something you need to think about. And yes, depending on who we're talking about, there's different buckets of people as far as like high performers that are trying to optimize sleep versus people that have really bad chronic insomnia versus sort of like the masses of people that really don't prioritize sleep and they don't measure it. So they don't even realize that they're not getting quality sleep. Depending on who we're talking to, there's sort of different steps that would apply to them. But mostly we work with the chronic insomniacs who have tried everything. We start with the mind.
Wow. And what does that mean? What do you sort of do? Is it
Yeah. So essentially what can happen is our mind can get in the way of our body doing what it's designed to do, which is sleep. So what I mean by that is people essentially build up all of this expectation, and they create all this stories about what happens when they don't sleep, which is tricky because it's actually true. Like if you're not sleeping, your body is, like we just talked about, is kind of breaking down, and that translates into all the other aspects of our life. But thinking about all those things, all those thoughts, creates hyperarousal. So first and foremost, it's how do you help somebody get out of a stress state and back into a state of rest? And that starts with understanding the thoughts, the beliefs, the patterns that they have, and supporting them to see those patterns as non-intelligent, and also give them tools to be able to shift out of those patterns. Some of the tools that we use, and probably the biggest one that we use at Sleep Science Academy, is acceptance. It sounds simple. It sounds like, wow, how does that even, what does that even mean? But actually teaching people not just to cognitively understand acceptance, but to embody a state of acceptance is transformational for people that have chronic insomnia. And just for people in general that don't really sleep that well. That maybe they don't have chronic insomnia, but trying to fight the night doesn't work.
in a nutshell, would you say that that is just trying to get people to be more present with their mind?
Yes, I think presence is kind of a first step to increasing awareness, and then it's the next step would be seeing how to get out of the pattern that most of us have. And there's a couple patterns that I find that people that get stuck with sleep issues have. And I call it the 3P pattern. And it's perfectionism, problem solver, and pedestal. And so I can share about each of these patterns if it's interesting, but
Yeah, that sounds, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
so this is actually the
Mindset.
first time I've shared publicly about this sort of framework. So we'll go through each one. So perfectionism pattern is people that are perfectionist,
Yeah.
that try to do things the right way.
Yeah.
That serves them in a lot of ways. Maybe they're very financially successful. Maybe, their home is organized and beautiful. But when you try to perfect sleep, it creates, again, pressure, and the wrong kind of pressure. The problem solver pattern, again, a lot of high performing entrepreneurs have. There's a problem, I'm going to solve it. I'm going to figure out how to fix it. Unfortunately, sleep is not something that you can fix, and trying to force or control it actually leads to the exact opposite. And so that's kind of that pattern. And then the pedestal pattern is the trickiest one of them all. It's because people put sleep on this pedestal and they don't have it, meaning like it's going to solve all their problems. It's going to, they're going to have more energy. Their relationships are going to get better. They're going to be more focused, more productive. And all that's actually true. But by putting it on a pedestal, it actually creates more desire and grasping, which pulls people from the present and keeps them in a stress state. So those
Yeah.
are the 3P patterns that keep people stuck.
Yeah. And so it's a lot of mindset work. Yeah. It's bringing them present and taking away anxieties. And what you said at the very beginning as well is once you are in that stress state, then the sleep gets worse from the stress, and then the stress gets worse because of the bad sleep. But that relates also to those mindset patterns every day as well, because more stress will put your body in that state of more fight or flight, which will put your body into a state of more anxiety, of that narrow thinking that I touched on before, where the pathways become quite singular and you're taking away all of the other neural connections. And so the only pathway your brain is taking is, oh my God, I'm not going to sleep. I'm not going to sleep. So it's
Right.
actually like you can't separate mindset and physical from two. If you're thinking a thought the same way, there is a physical connection and a neural activity going on that will build up in a stronger pathway. So it obviously, it's something that takes time to rebuild new pathways.
100%. Yeah. Unfortunately, I wish it was as easy as like giving people a pill or a supplement or something like that, but it does. Yeah. It's
A quick
really,
mantra, one mantra, and you're like, off you
right.
go.
Yeah. Meditation or hypnosis recording or something like that. Unfortunately, because of what you just mentioned, that's 100% what needs to take place. And most people are trained to always look at what's not working, what's not right. And that's a protection program from the beginning of time. And that survival program kept us alive, but now it's keeping us from sleeping. So, we need to retrain the brain to see what's working. And when I say what's working, meaning like, what are even the thoughts that work? What are the beliefs that work versus focusing on the ones that don't?
And you said the word protection, and I love that. And I've just done a podcast with Jamie, my wife, and we talked about the two states, growth or protection. And in that state of protection, it's very difficult to change habits. It's almost impossible when you are in a state of protection. When fight or flight, when your mind has those singular thought patterns, when you're always in a state of anxiety. And that can be as simple as, changing your posture really helps if you've always physically kind of got a protective posture or a protective thought pattern of, I'm not very good at this. And as you said, it's all about survival and protection. And so obviously that's part of the mindset work as well, is changing people's perception of themselves.
Yeah, 100%. Most people they're at threat, their safety, their security, or their sense of control, right? And when they're at threat, that's when the adrenals are pumping, and that's when the mind's racing, and that's really the reason why they're not sleeping. And so, understanding how to retrain that stress switch is so important, because a lot of times it gets stuck in the on position, and because people don't have the tools, they don't have the support or the process in order to really be able to turn it back off. And that's, if you're stuck in a closed defensive mindset, it's going to be really hard to change. And
Mm. And
Unfortunately, a lot of people get stuck there.
yeah, and all of those, and once you're stuck there, you don't even realize that you're there because it's this chronic underlying behavior and chronic underlying way that the body is doing what it's doing. And yet, all the time, it is also protecting all those chemical responses and your mind from allowing you to sleep.
100%. That the biggest shift that we see with the clients that we work with is when they shift out of this is happening to me to this is happening for me. When clients can actually get that, not just intellectually but like embody that and see how, wow, this is actually teaching me that something, it's here to show me that I need to look somewhere that I didn't, that I was ignoring or suppressing. And what gets suppressed gets expressed, and usually it gets expressed as illness, or in the case with the problem I solved, sleep problems. um, and so really helping people see, okay, well, first and foremost, how is this actually serving me? Like, how is this sleep challenge that's keeping me, that I'm complaining about, that I feel victimized, how is it actually working for me? And what is it, what can I learn from that? And when people actually get that, man, it's like a massive shift as far as not only how they feel but actually how they sleep.
Yeah. Wow. And it's one of those things that you don't know what you don't know. Like it's a total different feeling. It's a total different experience. It's like being on drugs. It would be the experience of being so present and shifting your mindset to things and changing your perception to your own world and your own thoughts and all of that. It's something that you don't know what it feels like until you experience it. You can't explain
100%.
it.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the challenging part. I think a lot of people, we all have sort of this perception, these filters that we filter the world from. We all feel like a certain way in our body, and oftentimes we don't know there's another level to us, to how much energy or how much focus or how much happiness we can experience, because we never touch that, because maybe we have some bad habits and we're just kind of stuck. But there's always this next level of awareness and presence and energy and joy and happiness. It's just a matter of being able to touch it. And then you look back and you said, holy crap, I thought that I was energized and I thought I felt good, but I actually wasn't. I was operating at like 60%. Um,
Yeah.
but you don't
Even
know
just
until you have the experience, right?
yeah, even just their levels of joy and those sort of thoughts are going to be increased. Yeah. Um, so let's say they've nailed all of that stuff, but physically there's still some things going on, like too much coffee or caffeine, too much blue light. Um, Tell us a bit about your hierarchy maybe of physical things that need to be changed to improve sleep.
Yeah. Well, first, I think there's a lot of the things that most people do, that are counterproductive to good sleep. But you named both of them, caffeine and alcohol. Um, you know, and usually what people do is caffeine is the upper, and then alcohol is the downer, right? And unfortunately, both of those disturb quality of sleep. So caffeine, like I mentioned earlier, blocks adenosine. Adenosine is what builds up in our body that makes us sleepy. And alcohol gets in the way of delta sleep and REM sleep, which are like quality of sleep. That's when our body and mind restores itself. So most people, again, are using caffeine because they're not sleeping well. They're maybe using it as a performance drug, abusing it. And the half-life of caffeine is like 6 hours. So it's in your system for 12 hours. So, if you're going to use caffeine, use it earlier in the day, ideally not first thing in the morning when your cortisol is already high. And then alcohol, if you're going to drink alcohol, do it earlier in the day, not right before you go to sleep. Because again, you're not going to get into quality, deeper levels of sleep. And then on this cycle goes,
Yeah. And you
you
mentioned sugars earlier in the chat too, and alcohol is a sugar, and so you're also dealing with this impact on the liver, on changing hormones and blood sugars and all of those things. So is that another reason why A, you don't want to have sugars at night and why you don't want to have alcohol at night?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just alcohol is really poison for our body. Again, I'm not. I have a glass of red wine and let loose once in a while. Absolutely. I love tequila. But you pay a price. And so you have, it's in moderation and used in the right ways. And when you have systems in place to sort of restore your mind and body from that abuse,
Mm.
you can get away with it once in a while. But it's one of those things that it truly does just it's a numbing agent, and that's why most people use it to escape. But there's other ways of escaping that are much healthier.
Yeah.
So
I find it so funny in modern society how, oh, it's alcohol's something we drink at night. And if you were drinking alcohol in the morning, they'd think you were weird. However, if you put it in context of, let's say you were exercising and you exercised and then afterwards, well, if you had to have sugar, if you really wanted a sweet treat, that's the best time to have it. When your insulin, sensitivity is at its highest, you can have the sugars, then it's the best time. And it's probably the same for alcohol as well. It's probably the best time to have it is when you're moving, when you need energy, because it is a high dense energy source. And yet, our society says, oh no, you shouldn't drink it early. You should drink it at night. And caffeine is, again, like, I can't believe caffeine in the last, if you just go back 10 years, it's a different world. If you go back 20 years, it's unrecognizable. There's not any coffee shops around, and now it's weird if you don't drink coffee. And I don't drink coffee anymore. I've found that it's not great for me. I feel so much better without it. Most of the clients that we work with feel better without it because they are coming from a place of already that higher level of stress and their sleep isn't as good. So, they need to lower stress levels in any way that they can. And yeah, and when, they go out and have a meeting for work or whatever, and it's at a coffee shop and they're not ordering coffee, everyone looks at you as if you've got three heads. And yet it's like, it's a drug. And if I sat here and had a shot of tequila at 10 a.m., you'd think I was the weird one. And it's just, you mentioned the word before, beliefs. And everything in life is based on beliefs. And most of our beliefs come from, society and marketing, and we're totally influenced. So yeah, back to, that's a long rant about why we do what we do, basically. A lot of peer pressure, and it's not through any scientific reasoning or it's any of those reasons. It's not good for us.
I love how clearly you put that. I mean, it is, there's all these programs that were conditioned, and that is alcohol and caffeine is definitely a program that is not serving us, for sure. And really with sleep specifically, like, sleep is seen as a weak habit of low performers. It's seen as a waste of time. It's like, you snooze, you lose, right? Like, I'll sleep when I'm dead. All these sort of catchphrases that most people have heard or said. It's kind of, people are praised for being, it's like it's a machismo thing. Like, I only slept 4 hours, the last 3 nights, and get it done, hustle. And it's really, it's like this conditioned sort of thing. It's like, and it's so backwards. I mean, just like everything you just said, it's like when you really start to look at things clearly, it's like, does this make sense? No, it does not. It doesn't make any sense. And that's what people are now kind of realizing. Okay, sleep is really important, but it's like, has been one of those things that's just been looked at as like a negative thing. Like, you're lazy if you sleep 8 hours, and it's like, no, you're smart if you sleep 8 hours.
And then another one is blue light, which I've been led to believe will block the production of melatonin at nighttime. So melatonin is one of those first hormones that helps then kick in all the other hormones, and they all do that clearing at night. So tell us about blue light, melatonin.
So melatonin, you can think of it as the sleep hormone or the vampire hormone. And so essentially that melatonin faucet, if you will, gets turned on when the sun starts to set. And because of the nature of the world we live in, with the technology we have and the lights and the screens and all that, essentially the myopsin cells in our eyes don't really, they're getting dysregulated because they think that the sun's still up because of all this blue light. And so again, we talked about those two systems in the body, circadian rhythm and sleep pressure system. Here we're talking about the circadian system gets all out of whack. And so, yes, you can definitely get blue light blocking glasses. You can get apps like Flux and Iris on your computers. One of the things that I noticed that actually makes a huge difference is actually as the sun starts to set, you just start turning off like half the lights in your home, like start to dim the lights in your house, and it kind of just prepares your mind and body for it. Kind of you start to get sleepy, and it's more relaxing. And the type of light bulbs you use also matter. So there's such thing as dirty light. And if you go into a hospital or if you go into like a traditional office building, these fluorescent bulbs are horrible for our health and our circadian rhythm. So now there's clean lighting, and there's certain bulbs like incandescent bulbs that you can put in your home if you really want to go that far. And even there's some cool stuff coming out tech wise where your lights start to change their hue as the sun starts to set, which is like very exciting to me. And again, you can nerd out and go really full force with this, but really at the end of the day, it's just getting back to nature, like getting back to like, it's not normal to be behind a screen for 8 hours, 9 hours a day. It's not normal, to not be in the sun. It's like the more we can get back to nature, the more balance we're going to find, and the more energy we're going to have and health we're going to have. So
Yeah.
that's my
I've got
rant
some,
on blue light.
yeah. What I do here is I've got lamps in the living room, and a couple of them are set to a timer, a wireless timer, so I can control them through my phone or on an app. So they come on before the sun sets. So you don't have that urge of suddenly, oh my God, it's dark, I'm going to switch on the overhead lights. There's that transition between, light and dark. And so they come on. I've got a setting on the TV preset to much, much dimmer. Like you can't even see the screen in daylight. So when it's daytime, it's so dim you can't make out. You've got to then change the picture back to a daytime setting. So I've preset all those sort of brightness levels, and it really makes a big difference. And you get used to it as well, which is what I want to tell the audience is you get used to this feeling of, like you say, you start to actually get prepared for sleep, and you get used to there not being bright lights around at nighttime. And we've got red globes in our bedroom in the lamps. So by the time we get to bed, it's like just completely red globes. And like I say, lamps in the bathroom, lamps everywhere at night. Because of my more fragile state, which I've had for 20 years or so, but I'm improving now. But I still have that sensitivity to light, and it is, I believe it's my body always has been telling me that you need to get to bed now because you've built up more stress. And so my light sensitivity is terrible at night. I don't like driving at night. So that's a question. Would you say that therefore is my sensitivity to bright light comes from that buildup of adenosine or melatonin, or is that just some other underlying physical impact or something?
Yeah, that's a great question. And honestly, I don't know. I know that there are certain types of people that are hypersensitive. They're just intuitive, hypersensitive people. And so they get more impacted by light and by temperature and by people's energy that are around them and by noise. And so like you're just hyper, and that's actually a gift. Like I think that's a gift for an amazing coach, is to have that level of sensitivity where you can tune into your environment, you can tune into the things around you, where most people are not that sensitive. And I think that
I like
actually,
that.
no, I mean, and I think it's true. And I think the healthier you become and the more aware you become and present and the more clean your body is, I think that sensitivity actually increases. So like most people are kind of dulling themselves with alcohol and with the wrong types of foods and the wrong types of habits. And it's sort of like a numbing of the senses. And so once you start to cut some of that stuff out, your sense awareness increases, and you start to pick up like notices per minute. Like you start to notice things you wouldn't have noticed, like maybe your eyesight's a little better. Like that's a gift. So I don't know the scientific reason around that,
Yeah.
but that's what I would
Yeah. Awesome.
suggest that's have going on.
Nice. And you mentioned earlier getting out in the sun. Getting out in the sun is good for circadian rhythms. Explain that to us.
Oh yeah. So not all. So for instance, blue light isn't all bad. Like blue light first thing in the morning is good. You want blue light because the sun actually has a hue of blue light. And so when you get up, the first thing you can do if you get outside and get some sunlight on your skin, your body, absorbs that from your eyes and from your skin. Not only getting vitamin D, but it's keeping that circadian clock synced. So sun is awesome first thing in the morning. And for those people that travel that don't want to experience jet lag, when you get off of the plane, depending on if you're going east or if you're going west and kind of what that makes a difference, but you can use the sun to sort of help reset your clock. And it's an amazing, there's so many benefits just to being outside, obviously, but specifically sunlight helps sync that circadian clock. So first thing in the morning, if you can get some sun, it'll do a world of difference for your rhythm, that resetting of that master suprachiasmatic nucleus, the master clock of the body. That sunlight is so important.
And sunglasses can inhibit some of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, I think there's a time and a place for sunglasses when you want to look cool or if you're fishing or if you're hiking and you're in the sun and you have, or if you have sensitive eyes, so, but first thing in the morning, like don't wear your sunglasses, get that light on your skin, take your shirt off if you can. Maybe not the women, but well, maybe, depending on what you're wearing, but yeah, get as much sunlight on your skin. That's important. You don't want to cover up this. It's important to get the sunlight on your skin.
And is it true that those triggers to increase melatonin that you will use for when you sleep, that you do actually get melatonin buildup during the day from the sun input?
I don't know, honestly. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. That's a good question.
I've seen that written somewhere, that helps. But obviously, in a way, it has to help because you're saying the sun helps circadian rhythm, and from circadian rhythm comes melatonin. So I guess it is.
Yeah, I don't know the exact sort of cascade of neurochemicals that creates that, but I know your eyes do have these myopsin cells, and there is, the sun does. Your body's on this rhythm of releasing melatonin, and that's what makes you sleepy. And there's certain, so I think it's serotonin. The precursor of melatonin is serotonin. So there's certain foods you can eat and things that can sort of help that process. Like tart cherry juice is a good one for natural melatonin. Kiwis is another good fruit. There's interesting research in Taiwan around kiwis and sleep. Which is interesting. Eating kiwis
sounds like a biohacker type thing,
Definitely.
Talking about the tiniest percentage of influence when you've got an elephant in the room still.
100%. And a lot of people miss the forest from the trees. And again, like eating a kiwi and not wearing sunglasses, it might help, but it's going to be very, very minimal compared to like all the things you could do to like not interfere with just your natural body's rhythm.
But I stopped wearing sunglasses when I started looking into the health stuff or sleep stuff maybe at some point a couple of years ago. And it's amazing how your eyes get adjusted to it. Like we're saying, your eyes adjust to that dimmer light at night. My eyes have adjusted really well to daylight. And whereas years ago when I would have put on sunglasses, 10 years ago, wear sunglasses all the time, everywhere. Looking cool everywhere. Not that I ever looked cool, but I thought I did. And you take them off during the day and suddenly it's like, oh my God, it's so glary. Whereas now I almost never wear them unless it is really glary. And so my eyes have definitely adjusted to taking in that level of light during the day. And, I love it. And I just don't need to wear them. And, you look at the sun in the morning when you're out riding early or running early without sunglasses, and it's just, it's a beautiful sunrise. And, I'm so grateful that I've stopped wearing sunglasses and can actually see everything in its natural beauty.
No, it's a good point. I mean, there's a lot of interesting literature on like sun gazing, like first thing in the
Mm.
morning and as the sun sets. Spiritually, there was like spiritual practice for some of these native cultures to literally, as the sun's coming up, literally stare into the sun, and as the sun's setting, stare into the sun, and it's supposed to, I mean, detoxify your pineal gland, or I don't really know the science around that.
But
But
it
to me,
feels
it
good.
makes, but it feels good. So yeah, so as long as you're not staring at the sun at 12 noon when it's, you know, the brightest, but no, I think one of the to the point you make is looking at the sun. It keeps your body in a rhythm. I mean,
Mm.
because for thousands of years, that's when the sun came up, that's when we would wake up, and when the sun set, that's kind of when maybe
Yeah.
you made a fire and there's some incandescent light
Mm.
from the fire. It's like the more we can get back to that, the better we're going to be, better
Yeah,
we're going to sleep.
like we were saying, it's only been in the last, few decades that things have really changed that are screwing up sleep really badly. If you go back even just 3 decades, the type of light that was produced from electronic devices was so much less blue light than it is nowadays. So yeah, it's become a bit of a pandemic in a way of how many things there are in our
Yeah,
lifestyle these days.
in 1910, the average American slept 9 hours. Now they sleep 6.8 hours on
Mm.
average.
Yeah,
So there you go. 1910 to
yeah,
2021. That's a big. It might not seem like a big drop in sleep time, and
yeah,
that's directly related to the industrial revolution, and then obviously all these the smartphone tech
yeah.
revolution.
I mean, it's
Um,
crazy. You only got to go back one generation and everything was completely different. And yet we've evolved to do what we do with the sun, with the earth, with food and everything for millions of years. And then in like in one generation, we've completely flipped everything on its head.
yeah, and I think that's really now people are realizing, hey, we got to get back to the basics. We got to get back to the way things were. Um, and it's interesting now. I think a lot of people are looking at that as like, oh, this person is, contrarian, or they're like old school, but it's really, I mean, it's not rocket science. It's just, how can we get back to the most natural way of living, and then what
Mm.
is the impact that going to have on our health and our happiness and our well-being. And
Yeah.
it's I think it's
Yeah.
really important.
I like when you mentioned before about the tribe that would look at the sun in the morning and the sun in the evening as it's rising and setting, and that I've been doing that for a while now. If I'm out riding or running, I look at it, and yes, in the back of my mind there is that kind of like, oh, this is good for me at setting my circadian rhythms and going to be good for my sleep. But in that moment of appreciating and being that feeling of gratitude and being present while appreciating something so beautiful and that moment in time, it's it's also giving your brain the exact mindset that you started talking about at the very beginning of the podcast, is of calming, of being present, and not having all of these other thoughts going through your head. So whether it's helping melatonin or not, but looking at the sun and just appreciating nature in a quiet moment is going to help your sleep because of taking that break out of your busy day.
100%. I like to say a great night of sleep happens as soon as you wake up.
So what you do with your mind from the beginning is how you're going to affect your sleep. Is that right?
Absolutely. I mean, if you're not taking energy breaks throughout the day, if you're not managing your stress levels, if you're going back to back, if you're eating the wrong foods, you're taking caffeine, you're doing all these, you're speeding up your body. You can't expect that. Your mind's not like, it just doesn't turn off.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't. So what you do the entire day is going to affect how you sleep at night, and then but it doesn't. It's just little small choices and changes you make consistently make the biggest difference. So you don't
Yeah.
have to totally throw the baby out with the bathwater, but just little things do make a difference over time. And
The,
having yeah.
the last thing I'll ask you, been really generous with your time today. Last thing, you just mentioned take energy breaks during the day, and it's something that I really press on my clients or my friends and family that are experiencing, pain or fatigue or those sort of issues is I tell them to go and just try and lie down and take some breaths and be present and calm your mind for, 5 minutes. Because in my mind and what I do, and if you can take out, as you said, that kind of rushing syndrome and get your brain away from other things, focus inwardly and be present, what would you say is an energy break that can help break that cycle and improve functions?
Yeah. So in my book, The Sleep Advantage, I talk about, ideal energy breaks, but it's essentially breathing. So breathing, getting out in nature, water, listening to music, really anything that's going to state like a state change.
Yeah.
So anything, you mentioned like, posture, like even if you can combine a couple of these things, like for me, I'll share what I personally do. I have a rebounder so I go out and I'll
Which
jump
is
for
a little trampoline for those in Australia that don't know what a rebounder is.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's a little trampoline, and so I'll jump on that. I also I have all kinds of like fun little tech here, biohacking stuff, but it can be as simple as just taking a moment and just breathing and just connecting to your breath, um, hydrating, drinking water, anything that's just going to get you connected from your mind back into your body. Taking your shoes off and going, putting your feet in the grass. Yeah. So it's like I think experimenting with different things to see like what works for you, and like you should feel a physical shift. If you're taking an energy break and you don't feel a physical shift, then you need to evaluate what you're doing on that energy break.
Awesome. Okay,
yeah.
that's awesome. Now tell us, where can everybody find you and find out more about this awesome information, the Sleep Science Academy, or your book and you?
Yeah. So sleepscienceacademy.com for those people that are, looking for specific have sleep challenges, that are looking for support. Amazon, the book is on Amazon, The Sleep Advantage, Optimize Your Night to Win Your Day. It's also on audiobook, which I prefer for people that are busy people, don't like to read.
Do you speak? Do you do the
I
audiobook?
do.
Oh,
I
well, you've got a
do.
beautiful voice, so everyone they'll rush out and buy it now to hear more of your.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. People have told me that that I put them to sleep, and I said, "Great, I love to go to bed with you. That's good. Go to if you listen to my voice." But yeah, so yeah, Sleep Science Academy, Devin Burke Wellness on all the social handles and YouTube and Instagram and all that good stuff. But love to connect with anyone that's
Yeah,
help
that was
or
unreal. Well, love the approach. Love all of that information. It's been unreal. It's been so valuable. Thanks for connecting with me. And yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure and a privilege to get to chat to you today.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you for the work you're doing in the world and for having me on the show.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks so much, Devin.